Hello, this is an artist review, and today's photographer that I'm going to introduce to you is Alexandra Leese. She is based in London, but for first 11 years of her life she lived in Hong Kong, and I think that affected her, sense of identity and seeing herself as both Chinese and English. I think it's quite interesting to have this duality as a visual artist, and also it affected her search for that sense of identity in her work. So let's have a look at some of her projects, and you will hopefully understand her as an artist better. So first project that I wanted to show you is called Boys of Hong Kong, and it is very interesting how it explores boyhood and manlyhood, masculinity versus femininity, and the stereotypes of how the society thinks men should be, and in the behavior, the social norms, and their own identity, and what they seem is right, and what they want to be actually, instead of what is imposed on them. So that's an interesting exploration, because I feel like there's a lot of photographers, female photographers, who are exploring femininity and sort of gender relationship, but a female photographer trying to explore the male world and their understanding of what seems normal to them and what seems right. I think it's very quite unique and very, very interesting to have that glimpse of that world. And what I also find unique about her approach to this project and her work in general is that she doesn't just limit herself by taking portraits. In any project, she does environmental portraiture, she does different still life images, she does landscapes. So basically anything that she thinks would help setting the mood. And in this particular project, we can see this, references to the current culture, to the expectations of the society, and then in parallel she shows the actual boys exploring their own masculinity, or diversity within masculinity, or trying to push the notions of effeminacy and obedience. So it's really quite interesting how she explores these different elements, and how she's able to keep the project together and stay sort of coherent in her story, what she's trying to tell, and how these all different elements bring their own little contribution to the main idea, to the concept, what she's trying to deliver to the viewer. And I think being flexible in your approach, although she was trained as a fashion photographer, but her approach is really quite documentary, and being so flexible in seeing interesting elements in completely different scenes, whether it's a landscape or a cityscape or a piece of still life, and being able to tie it into the story, I think is a really special skill that she has, or she maybe has developed over the years of being a photographer. And I think that what makes her as a visual artist quite unique, and helps her stand out. And also, it helps creating those stories. It's really something that helps the viewer relate to the environment, for example, to the stories, to the characters, and see different sides of the same story, of the same setting. So not just portraits, right? So it's a very documentary approach, but also I like sort of the fashion eye in it, when she looks at colors, when she looks of this subculture of different young men involved in different activities. So it's really, really interesting, and I think it's a very deep exploration of the topic that makes her so much more than just a fashion photographer, for example. So another project that I wanted to share with you is this one. It's called Helmut Lang Redheads. So she's collaborated with Helmut Lang. She's done some project for the brand, not just this one. And she also did several projects for ID magazine. So in that regard, she's really already quite accomplished, and she's recognized in the fashion scene, fashion industry, which is great. But yet, at the same time, she was able to stick to her own voice and keep her own sort of personality as an artist, which is really, really great. So it doesn't matter what she photographs, whether it's a personal project or a client sort of fashion project. I think you can still see her how much she's drawn to real people, their realness, their interesting faces, their interesting body language, their awkwardness, their diversity. And I think the fact that she is in search of her own identity and trying to find that balance between being Chinese and English, growing up in Hong Kong, but then spending many years of her life in London, I think that gives her a very interesting perspective. And so when she looks at people, I think she starts noticing their also sort of either awkwardness or not understanding who they are or where they belong. And so she looks for these things and notices them. So she has this very interesting sensitivity. And I really enjoy looking at her subjects. It's really, I think, the casting is done just on really extraordinary high level. It's such a high attention to details, to the personality, without trying to make them look, conventionally posing or model-like, expressions or anything like that. So it's all very with deep care to their own personality, to their own uniqueness, which I really, really appreciate. And her also sense of color, sense of shot composition, shot design, I think it's also really, really good. And by just studying this, you can learn a lot. And so let me show you one more very interesting project that also speaks about similar ideas. It's called Helmut Lang, also a collaboration with the designer Women of Wales. And I really appreciate the subject, how she picked her subjects, and her attention to the topic of elderly women and their sort of belonging within the modern culture, and belonging also in the space where they live. And I think, bringing the attention back to that generation itself, it's really, really important, because in the modern fashion imagery or advertising imagery, we either don't have any of these women represented, or we have them represented in a very sort of cheesy, very conventional way. Oh, this is a good grandma, or this is a perfect wife of this another elderly man, for example. So it's a very, that conventional sort of picture perfect way, but we don't see the diversity, we don't see the struggle, we don't see any of the sort of unconventional points of view on these women. So I think it's a very, very interesting project. Especially, I think what makes it more interesting is the collaboration with the designer and them being dressed in this clothes, very high-end designer clothes. But in some ways, I think they feel empowered, these women, but you can still see the awkwardness and sort of not being the conventional fashion model that would present it in a certain way, but kind of not understanding maybe completely where they are, where they belong, but also at the same time you can see that some of them are very proud of being a part of this project and being themselves, who they are. So it's like it's a diversity, and different women feel themselves in completely different ways. And I really appreciate that the photographer was able to cast these different characters and see and show us this diversity. So it's a really, really beautiful project, and it's unique. It has its own voice, and Alexandra was able to keep her own approach again to noticing the details, showing all these different little environment details and characters in their own environment. So it's a really beautiful project. And one more that I wanted to show you is the phased One Brotherhood. So just in contrast, I showed you a couple of her fashion projects, but I also wanted to show the documentary side of her work, and her attention to details and her ability to connect with subjects, to direct them very slightly to make them still comfortable in front of the camera, and her sense of composition. It's just extraordinary. The shot design is really, really beautiful. So I think, doesn't matter what you do as a photographer, what your style is, as long as you are able to really be truly sort of in love with your subject and what you do, and appreciate their environment, their energy, and explore what their world is. I think that will make your work ever so much stronger, and that will help your viewer connect to it on such a better level. So yeah, I hope you like Alexandra's work, and if you want to see and explore more of her projects, I will have the links down below in the description of this video. Please like and subscribe as always, and stay tuned for more.